So I think what's really important, especially when we're talking about the context of coming back to work, is to get specific on what I call the activating agents are. Because what happens when we're anxious or worried, it tends to be this sort of uninvestigated ball of feelings, and really we need to nail down and become clear on what is the real issue. Is it fear of infection? Is it fear of getting on the train? Really becoming clear. And actually, Louise, writing that down as a first point to really get clear on what the path is and the path through these anxious feelings is. So writing it down is really helpful. And in fact, there was a great study in 2015 that showed that when you write things down, it can actually help reduce the physiological response and symptoms of anxiety. So many people, and I'd love to know in the comments afterwards, will have breathing practices. But a really interesting one that came out of Stanford University is something called the physiological sigh. And it's a pattern of breathing that we do naturally anyway, actually. And I don't know if anyone's ever seen anyone who's been sobbing heavily or in their sleep. They'll be sobbing, suddenly they'll go, like that. And what this pattern of breathing is when carbon dioxide levels go up in our bloodstream, it triggers the impulse to breathe, right? And when we're performing the physiological sigh, we breathe into our diaphragm for one, another little short one, and a long out breath. Basically, what this does is it inflates all these tiny little sacs that are coating our lungs. So it allows us to intake the maximum oxygen and inflate these lungs and offload carbon dioxide. And Stanford were very clever actually in the way they cited this, because rather than in the work environment having to go off and do your breathing practice, this is one of the quickest ways to mobilize the calming response, because we're tapping into what we're doing very naturally anyway. So 3 to 5 rounds of this physiological sigh will help you start to mobilize that calming response, which then, of course, buffers against a feeling of anxiety. There are many things we could do in the work environment. Another thing, which people who are struggling with anxiety in the workplace can often feel quite ungrounded and sort of out of body because of a sense of being out of control. So another lovely thing that I have some of my clients do is what's called a butterfly hug. And if you don't want to do this because it's too visible, you could do this actually on your thighs. And it's literally, as you're breathing, you can just pat very gently. And this works on really the reflex of the orientation response in the body, where the nervous system will have a natural tendency to orientate to new stimuli. And this can be very soothing for people who are anxious. And you could just be doing it on your thighs underneath your desk as you're breathing. And it can be very hypnotic and help things just slow down.